The Commission for the Blind held their regular board meeting February 6, 2026 at 1 p.m. in Portland, Oregon.
All right, so it's 1:03 p.m. and this meeting is called to order. Max, would you please take roll?
Certainly. Chair Nadira Broom is noted as present. Lillian Goodman is not here, but she expects to be. I won't mark her late until she arrives. Laurel Hudson.
Present. Sorry
Dr.
about that.
Labrum.
Present.
Stephanie McGarry.
Present.
Nalacey Porter.
Present.
And Scott Wall.
Present.
Madam Chair, we do have a quorum. The meeting could go forward.
Thank you, Max. All right, before we proceed, I just want to remind my fellow commissioners that we will be continuing with the discussion on the strategic plan development today. So the agenda has been arranged so that we can facilitate that discussion, and we would really appreciate hearing from each of you. We need your valued input. So just bear that in mind going forward. Okay, now let's proceed with the approval of the minutes from the December meeting. I hope you all had a chance to look them over as they were sent out beforehand. So I'm looking for a motion to approve them.
This is Scott. I make a motion to approve the minutes as delivered.
Thank you, Scott. Looking for a second.
Stephanie seconds.
Thank you, Stephanie. Max?
I'll take the roll. Nadira.
I approve.
Lillian, not here yet. Laurel.
Approve.
Dr. Labrum. Stephanie.
Approve.
And Nalacey.
Approve.
Scott.
Approve.
The motion carries.
Thank you, Max. All right, now moving on with the audience introduction.
Thank you. First of all, we have Daisha Johnson, the Executive Director of the agency. And then we have Angel Hale, Director of Vocational Rehabilitation Services. Kat Martin is with us, Chief Financial and Information Officer. Ron Stewart is the Director of the Director of the Business Enterprise Program. Jim Portillo, Director of the Orientation and Career Center for the Blind. Paul Coons, Director of Independent Living Services. We also have today Clay France, the agency's internal auditor, and Jonathan Scrimenti, who's our Workforce Innovation Manager. Is there anyone who I overlooked that's at the agency? Now, Michael, would you like to introduce yourself?
Sure. My name is Michael Babcock, attending as a member of the public.
Thank you. I think that's everyone, Nadira.
Okay, thank you. All right, we're moving on with public comment. Is there any public comment today? Okay.
1:07 p.m.
All right, hearing none. Moving on with the executive director report. Daisha?
Thank you, Madam Chair. Happy New Year. Happy 2026, Commissioners. By the time we have our first meeting with you all, it feels like 2026 has been going for a while, but it is indeed our first calendar year meeting. We've been busy at it. We always hit the ground running. There's a lot of federal reporting that happens in January. We also start the early stages of preparing for the agency budget development for the next biennial budget, which this sounds like it's forever from now, but it'll be here before we know it. 2027-2029 budget. So we're 6 months into this current biennial budget, and we are starting very early preliminary work on the next biennial budget. So we're always budgeting in some way, shape, or form. So I'm going to have Kat talk a little bit with you to go over the donations report and the financial report.
Thank you, Daisha. Good afternoon, Madam Chair, Commissioners, colleagues, and guests. Beginning with the December 2025 bequest and donation statement, interest earnings on the cash balance in the fund over the last 2 months exceeded $5.8 thousand. OCB received another $31,444 in new donations, leaving the cash ending balance on December 31st, $836,998 after accounting for credit card processing fees. Referencing the financial status report as of December 31st, 2025, the Commission's legislatively adopted budget for the biennium 25 through 27 is $9,522,624 in general fund, $1,149,704 other fund limitation, and $22,158,954 in federal fund limitation, for a total operating budget of $32,831,282, 67 positions, and 67 full-time equivalents. With 6 months of transactional activity complete in the statewide financial management application and projecting 18 months into the future, we're once again looking at a shortfall when comparing budget to projected expenditures, despite receiving reallotment dollars in last summer's reallotment process. Updated projections suggest that special payments, which are services to clients provided by other than the Commission for the Blind, and durable goods like computers acquired on participants' behalf, will be $3.1 million over budgeted amounts. While this is consistent with trends in previous years, and despite some ability to offset this with underspending in key categories like personnel costs and agency-specific services and supplies, the total variance for the close of the biennium as of this reporting is $549,492 over the legislatively adopted budget, or 2%. Additionally, while revenue utilized for the first 25% of the biennium is trending as budgeted for our first 6 months, revenue is not the same thing as cash available to cover our expenditures. That financial picture is evolving, with the amounts of the federal fiscal year 26 awards still not known with certainty, and action pending during the 2026 legislative session, which kicked off this week. Those legislative actions will include the salary pot adjustment, which primarily increases our federal fund limitation, which is the authority to spend but does not address the cash need, and could potentially result in giving back general fund allotted with our original legislatively adopted budget. That concludes my report. May I answer any questions for anyone?
Questions for Kat? All right, thank you, Kat.
Thank you.
All right, the next item is just to give you a federal update. If you were tracking the news late last week, the Senate, the House last week had passed a series of budget packages that went over to the U.S. Senate, and the Senate, because of concerns and issues related to Homeland Security, the bills were packaged together as one unit, and the Senate took action and approved all of the budgets with the exception of Homeland Security. And because they made changes to the package, it had to return to the House for additional work. And the House had left Washington, D.C. and was on recess. So we had a very brief shutdown. The continuing resolution ended on the 31st of January. And on Tuesday, so Tuesday evening, the House had passed the package and it went over to the President for signature. So as of Wednesday of this week, the government is fully open. They are still negotiating the appropriations and conditions for funding for Homeland Security. That right now is in the House. But the Department of Education was one of those package budgets that the Senate approved, that the House approved those changes, and it went on for signature. So we actually have an appropriated amount of funds that the Congress passed a budget for the rest of the federal fiscal year. I had actually predicted that they would do that. And we are waiting for the Rehabilitation Services Administration at the U.S. Department of Education to give us what's called our grant award notification, or GAN, as we call them. And that grant award notification will tell us how much we will have to work with for the remainder of this federal fiscal year. And it gives us some sense as to what we can anticipate for future years forward as well. So it's an important point of reference for us for fiscal forecasting. Some good news, they had been doing a reversion of funds that they did not include in this. So it is a full award that includes the cost of living adjustment that is required under our federal law. So we are anticipating getting a fairly significant increase, potentially in the area of like 5 or 6%. So we've been sitting on an average of a couple percent, so 5 or 6% will be positive. The other thing that is factored into awards is information about per capita income and population and other details as well. And so Oregon's population had a slight increase, so that might actually be in our favor as well. So hopefully it takes them, last time we had a continuing resolution and then they passed a budget, we got our grant award notifications in about 12 days, which is like a record. So we're expecting hopefully that we would have the grant awards by, if it passed through on the evening of the 3rd, probably I would hope that we would get them by the middle of the week after next. So maybe perhaps on the 18th or 19th of February. And pause and see if there are any questions about funding on the federal level.
Stephanie.
Hi, Stephanie.
So so if we get this extra money, I mean, I know we're going to talk about strategic planning for selection order. How is this going to help?
Yeah, so a couple ways it'll help is we are projecting that we're going to be short on revenue for this biennium if we use a more conservative projection. So if we get, the more money we get, the less short we will be on the revenue side. So it's not really going to help us in terms of, creating a surplus of funds, but it'll help us with the increased costs that we're experiencing. So that's where it is good news.
Thank you.
Sounds good. Can I provide some additional context, Tisha?
Sure.
The difference between the 3% average and the 6% that I estimated is $250,000.
Oh,
so
okay.
if the increase in the award is 6% over what we received for 25, instead of the 3% I used in preparing longer range fiscal projections, it's $250,000 I wasn't counting on, which isn't going to go far, but I will take every bit we can get.
Yes. Thank you for explaining that.
Yeah, thanks for the question. And then the other major federal issue that we had been handling is the status of the U.S. Department of Education entering into those interagency agreements with other departments at the federal level to move services from the Department of Education out to the Administration for Community Living and Health and Human Services, or the U.S. Department of Labor. There has been one key position in the Office of Special Education and Rehabilitation Services within the Department of Education that has moved to Administration for Community Living. That suggests that perhaps the special education services are going to be moving to Health and Human Services, but they are kind of moving and plotting at a slow pace at this point. There has been no further discussions around the potential movement of the Rehabilitation Services Administration, but continued speculation that effort is likely underway as well. So no real substantive movement on that since our December report. Any questions about that? All right, I'll move on to the 2026 legislative session. So every even year, the legislature comes to town for, by constitution, no more than 35 days. They started the legislative session for 2026 on Monday of this week. So if you count 35 days from Monday, they will have to have their work wrapped up by then. They all have a very limited number of bills that they could introduce. And the first chamber deadline for a hearing for bills is this upcoming Monday. So you can have a sense that they are very, very quick in their process to be able to kind of handle just a handful of legislative changes during the short session. Sometimes we have more activities going on during the short session. The one thing that we're tracking at this point, which I have not even seen introduced yet, is the omnibus bill, or the bill that basically has state appropriations in it, which referenced that salary pot. There will be a big bill that will go through the Ways and Means process that will list all of the agencies, and then basically what our portion of the negotiated salary adjustments were that the legislature will appropriate out, either in the form of additional general fund or that spending authority that Kat mentioned that is helpful, but it doesn't include the cash that goes with it. So if you get, $1 million in limitation from the feds, but you don't have the money to actually spend, it is not useful to us in terms of paying our bills, if that makes sense. So we're tracking just the activities that are happening at the legislative. There is lots of conversations about the economic forecast that came out on Wednesday of this week. It was a slight improvement over the November forecast, but because of the increase in costs anticipated because of the federal law changes that happened in June of last year, the legislature is still anticipating having to take reductions from agencies. And we have an optimistic outlook at this point that, given our size and limited amount of general fund that we receive relative to other large agencies, that we will get out of this legislative session without any reductions. And that will also help with our fiscal forecasting, because at this point, we're told to prepare for 5% reductions, and so Kat has factored that in. I'm hoping that we can factor that back out at the conclusion of the legislative session. Questions about that? All right, and then my final item, just to remind you that last year when we had our annual federal compliance audit, there was one area that they wanted to follow up on to make sure that we had completed our corrective actions, and that was related to documentation on closures. They did reach out shortly after the new year and indicated that they were going to begin their testing, and we have exchanged documentation with them. And we anticipate to have the results of that hopefully by your upcoming meeting at the end of March, but certainly by the following meeting, we would have the finalized report and recommendations. This is a follow-up that has happened a couple of times, and we anticipate, be back for a regular cycle audit in about this time next year. So they were looking just at one specific thing, and they'll go back to looking at a more broader range of areas in the vocational rehabilitation program and financial reporting associated with that next year. So it's a really helpful wellness check for us, and we're hoping to be able to fully resolve this one small finding that we had continued to have some challenges with. Questions about that? All right, not hearing anything, Madam Chair, that concludes my report.
Great, thank you, Daisha, and thank you, Kat. All right, we're moving to new business. Agency contracts review.
Good afternoon. This is Clay France, the internal auditor, and I will tackle this topic. It's a pleasure to be here with you this afternoon, and I would like to take just a couple of minutes to review an audit, or a review, as we're calling it, that I recently completed. So, as part of the 2025 internal audit plan, we had scheduled a review of the agency's professional services contracts. I recently completed this. We sent the detailed report to each of you, and today I'll take just a couple of minutes to address it at a high level, and then we'll gladly answer any questions you may have. So, as a little overview of what we mean when we say professional services contracts, sometimes due to limited resources or the location of our clients or specialized training needs, the agency engages professional vendors to help provide specific short-term services to our clients. These services can include orientation and mobility skills, adaptive communication skills, computer technology, career exploration, work evaluation and training, and even job and small business development. So some of you may recall that back in 2023, I performed an audit in this same area, and we found a fair amount of room for improvement. And so this is a follow-up to that audit. And the objectives this time were to determine if these contracts, these professional services contracts, contain a fully completed and approved application and an application approval checklist, to determine if there was an adequate separation of duties between who reviewed the potential vendor's qualifications and then who approved the new contract and signed the contract. And then lastly, but also important, is determine if each RFA contract meets the federal, state, and agency requirements, is properly completed and approved, and then supported with the required documentation. For this review, I reviewed 10 out of the 37 existing contracts that were active as of September 30th of 2025. And then I also reviewed all the corresponding supporting documentation for each of those 10. The good news is, overall, the process has substantially improved since the last review in 2023. The VR program implemented several new processes that have strengthened the controls over the function. There's a good segregation of duties in place between who's reviewing the vendor qualifications and then who's approving and signing the contract. And the contracts are, in general, properly completed, approved, and supported by the required documentation. So that's all good news. There were 3 areas that I identified where we can continue to strengthen our controls, and I'll just touch on these briefly. One area was background checks. So for each new vendor we perform, and for each new vendor and any employees that work for them that will be dealing with our clients, we perform a background check on them at the time before we initiate the contract. Some areas for improvement in this process, even though the process has been totally revamped since the prior audit 2 years ago, and in general, controls are much stronger. We still have a little room for improvement around. I'm recommending that when we renew a contract, that we go ahead and pull a new background check for the vendor and any key persons involved. And typically, we renew a contract every 3 years. Also recommending that we strengthen our controls around maintaining our records of review and approval around the background checks. And then lastly, recommending a managerial spot check occasionally of the process to make sure it's working as planned. The second area is around the insurance risk assessment. So the Department of Administrative Services at the state require that each agency completes an insurance risk assessment for each new client. And this risk assessment helps identify which insurance would be required for the contract and the dollar amounts of coverage that would be required. So in general, our vendors are pretty uniform in that we require the same insurance and the same dollar amounts, but we're still required by the state to do this risk assessment. So, and we have not been doing it consistently. And then the last area is around the statement of work. So within the contract, we include a statement of work that identifies the vendor responsibilities, the type of work they can provide, uh, the corresponding hourly rate, the key persons within that vendor's organization that are authorized to meet with our clients, and whether the vendor will be providing these services in person to OCB clients or remotely. So within the agency, it's the vocational rehabilitation counselor's responsibility to ensure that these vendors are only providing the authorized services to our clients, that they're charging the correct hourly rate, and that they're only meeting alone with clients in person if approved by OCB. The area for improvement in this area is that we don't have a regular ongoing training program to make sure that the counselors know where this key information is maintained and also know their responsibility for ensuring the vendors are complying with the requirements. So those are the three areas with some room for improvement. I've provided recommendations to the VR program. They agree with the findings and they are already taking steps to strengthen these areas. Any questions about all of that?
Yes, this is Neil AC.
Fine.
So my question's regarding background checks. So you were indicating currently the background checks are conducted before a contract and then before the renewal of a contract.
Yes, and then sometimes during the life of a contract, a vendor will add key persons to the contract. So it's people that work with the vendor. So when they add a new person, then we'll perform a background check on them
Okay,
as well.
perfect. That was going to be my question in that scenario. What happens? Because I missed that the first time around. So
Correct.
that answers my question. Thank you.
All right, thank you. Any other questions? All right.
Great. Thank you,
Thank you.
Clay. Thank you. Okay, we move on with the vocational rehabilitation state plan updates 2024 to 2027.
Good afternoon, commissioners. This is Jonathan Skirmity speaking. Thank you for giving me a few minutes of your meeting to talk about the state plan. My overall plan to talk about the state plan is to provide a quick overview, a timeline, and then highlights of changes. And then just as a reminder, at the end, there will be an action item. So the Workforce Innovation and Opportunity Act, often referred to as WIOA, requires that states submit a plan on how to spend the funding they receive. For our purposes, this process and the purpose is mostly similar to a grant application. The state plan is a living document, and we currently run from July 1, 2024 to June 30, 2028. Now, agencies are required to submit a mid-cycle update, which mostly focuses on large operational changes, goal progress, and any new agreements or partnerships that the agency may have entered into since the first submission. Keep in mind that the OCB submission is part of the larger state plan as a whole, and so we're following this schedule. On Friday, February 27th, the agency has a deadline to submit our narrative to the agency that assembles the state plan as a whole. On Thursday, March 5th, public comment will open. On Friday, March 13th, the Workforce Talent and Development Board, also called the WTDB, at their meeting, they will provide an overview of the plan and then defer approval of submission of the plan to the executive committee meeting in their April meeting. And the reason for that is that public comment does not close until April 3rd. And then on April 15th, the WTDB Executive Committee will take a vote to approve the state plan. The impact of the above timeline for us is mostly just related to public comment. OCB will receive public comment on the state plan as a whole. And then also we will invite our clients to participate in the public comment period as well. So I'll now transition to two areas of content change at a high level for the state plan. One item of interest is the goals, priorities, and strategies section. When we submitted the 2024 plan, the agency was in a period of growth, and our goals largely reflected that, both in terms of quantity, there were 45, and then quality as well. The goals sounded like expand, create, investigate new. As the state plan aligns with our agency strategic plan, I think it'd be fair to say for us that we're in a little bit more of a conservative period and maybe maintaining or even making operational changes to kind of rein in some spending. As such, we've reduced the number of goals and we've really focused on existing relationships. For example, we have a goal that within the WorkSource Oregon network, the business relations team will attend each of the business services team meetings every month so that we're better serving the clients that are currently on our caseload. And again, I just shared that one specific goal as an example because we believe those will cascade up to the larger WIOA goals, such as the percentage of case closures with an employment outcome, increased median wages, increased employer satisfaction, and of course, measurable skill gains. And then second, larger area of change is order of selection, and that we did review in your fall 2025 meeting. And just keep in mind that order of selection is the technical term that is just for the waitlist. The state plan details how that order of selection will play out and how we will follow the federal regulations that tell us how to execute the waitlist. In the plan, we discussed the agency's reasons for requesting the order of selection, such as the 5 years of data that showed that the case cost has increased by 14.9%, as well as there's a 11% year over year caseload growth on average. So with that in mind, we also talked about the WorkSource Oregon centers and how they're ready to meet the needs of OCB clients who are on the wait list, and that our technical assistive tech staff are able to assist the WorkSource Oregon centers with any technical challenge that they might have in supporting OCB clients on the wait list. So again, that was just a high-level overview of the schedule, some content changes, and then how we fit into the overall state plan as Oregon Commission for the Blind. At this point, I'm happy to pause, wait for any questions, and then turn the microphone back over to the chair, who may ask for an action item regarding the state plan.
Any questions, commissioners? Okay. Hearing none. So, regarding an action item, just so we get everything understood, can you elaborate what we're looking for? So the motion we're looking for?
Am I correct, Dacia and Angel, that we're looking for a motion to approve the draft of the state plan?
Yes, approval to approve the state plan updates for 24-27.
Okay, just want to get my language clear.
Thank you.
Okay.
Thank you.
Okay, so commissioners, we're looking for a motion.
This is Scott. I make a motion to approve as delivered.
Okay, thank you, Scott. Looking for a second?
Stephanie seconds.
Thank you, Stephanie. Max?
Nadira,
I approve.
Laurel,
I approve.
Dr. Labram,
I approve.
Stephanie,
Approve.
Nalesi,
Approve.
and Scott.
Approve.
Measure passes.
Okay, thank you. Great, thank you, Jonathan. Moving on to old business and the Business Enterprise Program update.
Good afternoon, Commissioners. I'm Ron Stewart, Director of the Business Enterprise Program. Quick overview of the BEP performance for federal fiscal year 2025. Gross sales for the program were $3,185,069, and that was up from $3,165,686 in 2024. The vending facility manager's average net income was $58,971, and that was down a bit from $64,847 in 2024. Some updates and celebrations. We have a new licensee taking over a micro market and a cafe at the Edith Green building in Portland. That's actually happening this month. In 2025, we deployed 30 state-owned machines for self-servicing by vending managers. We added 17 new vending sites to the program. We piloted smart stores at 3 locations. In January, we opened up a brand new cafe at the Capitol building. If you're in that area, stop by and say hi to Sal. Great food. Let's see, we just licensed a trainee in December. His name was Mike, and he was licensed. And we also have one of our VFMs launched a catering business at the Labor and Industries building in Salem, Oregon. And that's my update. Are there any questions?
Yes,
Hi,
this is
Ron.
Nalesi. Oh, sorry. Go ahead.
Go ahead, Nalesi. I'll ask after.
I was gonna ask, what was the acronym you used? It was a B something.
Oh, the BEP Business Enterprise Program.
Oh, okay. Okay, I should have known that. Thank you.
This is Alan. Hi, Ron. You mentioned like the average for the vending machine businesses is slightly down. How is the distribution? I remember like last time, there was like a huge difference between like the top earner versus the lowest earner. Has that kind of difference been reduced? That difference has been reduced. We've been working hard to identify the lower earning VFMs, and we either created new opportunities for them to bid on new facilities. We created a new facility, or we added self-service vending to their routes so that everybody meets at least a minimum threshold for earnings. Great, thank you. Yeah, you're welcome. Any other questions?
Hey, Ron, this is Laurel.
Hello.
You mentioned you added 17 new licensees, is that right?
17 new sites.
Oh, new sites. Okay. And then do you remember or do you know how many you added in 2024? Just out of curiosity, like what's the difference?
That's a good question. I'd have to look that up for you, but I can send it over. Yep.
No, yeah, I'm just curious to see like if it was up or down from the year prior, but no, it's no big deal.
Okay, thanks.
Yeah, thank you for sharing.
And Commissioners, you got a copy of our annual legislative report. Some of the statistics are included in that as well. The legislature, when we made changes to the law in 2017, one of the provisions is that we submit an annual report to them by the middle of January and include our federal report data as an appendix. So you received that. So if you want to know lots of other types of random facts about the Business Enterprise Program, you can refer to the appendix in the report that we provided you a few weeks ago.
Okay. Any further questions? All right. Oh, hearing none. Thank you. Thank you, Ron.
Thank you.
All right. Okay. All right. We move on with the order of selection for the vocational rehabilitation.
Yes, good afternoon, Commissioners. Angel Hale here, Director of Voc Rehab. And you heard from Jonathan, just a reminder of kind of what the order of selection is. We are referring to it as a wait list because that is what it is. The technical term is order of selection. But we have since your last meeting, we did a pretty thorough update, I think, of just where we're at in the process. We have asked RSA, the Rehabilitation Services Administration, for permission to go into the order of selection. They have since responded and asked for additional information, which is part of our state plan process. We are looking to amend the state plan in order to incorporate the order of selection. So there are some elements that they want to make sure that are part of that state plan. We have since responded to that request for additional information. Actually just this week on the 3rd, and they responded on the 4th that they received our submission and that they will be reviewing it. So we are hoping that we will hear something very soon in terms of any additional questions they might have. And then ultimately, we are asking for permission to go into the order, hopefully sometime in February, since January has already passed. And we do anticipate, obviously, having some lead time so that we can let our staff and clients know the date of when the order will be implemented once we get that approval. But we are currently in a holding pattern to get that permission in place before we can set a date and then move into the order of selection. I will tell you that we have counselors working very diligently to get people that have applied into plans. So that is something that is actively happening right now, especially as it relates to our transition population, because we would like to make sure that as many students as possible can get the full breadth of our services if they are ready to engage in full VR services rather than just in the potentially eligible category. So that has been a heavy lift because we want to get as many students able to, for example, come to their summer work experience program as possible. So we have some very busy transition counselors right now that are trying to work with alongside our partners, for example, at Portland Public Schools. So Scott Law has been integral in helping make sure that students are getting referred in and that we're able to get what we need to get our students into their individual plans for employment. So a lot of work being done right now, and we are very much looking forward to settling in so that we can start reducing the spending. It's going to take time for that to happen as we move into our wait list, but we do anticipate that we will be able to better serve the populations that are in our system that are under a plan. Once we get into the order of selection, we'll really be able to hone in and make sure that the services that our current clients need are getting those, and then be able to monitor that wait list actively. So we are underway and waiting for additional information. Are there any questions from the board for anything that you might be wondering about with the order of selection?
Stephanie?
Yes, Stephanie.
So how is that going to work again? Is it's still what we have talked about in the past, such as the different categories, or how is that going to look like?
Yeah, exactly like what we said in the past. So it will be based on people who have the highest needs. And when we go into the order, we will be closing all categories. So this is something that will happen over time as we're monitoring our spending and making sure that we have money to open up categories, but that it is exactly as we described.
Okay. Another question is, so what happens if someone's case is closed and they somehow lose that employment? will they go to the bottom of the list, say if they only have blindness and that's it, or how will that work?
They would be, it is in the order of application and their priority. So depending on the assessment does need to be done in terms of what priority they would be placed in. But for now, yes, if someone were needing to seek new employment, they would be added to that wait list. But a reminder, if someone is in danger of losing employment, we hope that they would reach out to us as soon as possible and make sure that that is made very clear to their counselor. And that way they would skip the wait list because that is that is the one area that we're able to build into our state plan to allow people to skip the categories that would be part of the wait list, and they would jump to the ability to be determined eligible, and if eligible, moved into plan. Yeah, thank you for the question.
Stephanie, this is Daisha, and I'll just add that blindness can't, by in and of itself, it's based on the service needs and the barriers. So it's very possible that someone with blindness with not a secondary disability, for example, would still have a higher priority rating. It's based on that individual's needs and it's determined eligibility. So the challenge for us as a blind agency is most in the past, most of our clients were actually in the top category with the most significant needs and the most requiring the most services. So then in essence, what happens is you're taking individuals off from a practical impact based on application date.
Okay.
So blindness oftentimes has resulted in individuals ending up in a higher priority area, but it just based on the assessment that's done at eligibility.
Okay.
Any other questions about the order of selection waitlist process? Okay, well, thank you for your time, and hopefully by the next time we meet, we will be in the order of selection and be able to give you some updates about how that process is going. Thank you so much.
Thank you, Angela. All right, so we're moving into our work session on the strategic plan development, 2026 to 2029.
Yes, thank you, Madam Chair. We will be joined shortly by Pete Pandy from Pivotal Resources. If you were here a couple years ago when we did this, he helped facilitate the conversation, and hopefully we'll have an opportunity to hear from you all. As you will also remember, this is our business routine. We have been updating our strategic plan every couple of years to make sure that it's current and relevant and up to date. And what's really helpful to us is as we're building kind of the early foundational elements of our budget for the next 2 years, we're thinking not only operationally, but we're getting guidance from you as the leaders of the organization on the strategies that we should be considering and incorporating and the priorities that make the most sense for an agency like ours. So we sent a memo in the helps that it, just kind of gets us thinking to prime the conversation. But what we know as we kind of move into this new time for the agency, we continue to see more clients, particularly in the area of aging seniors. Our resources have been challenged and have been flat. So as our service costs have gone up, the costs to employ individuals have gone up. Our resources have stayed fairly flat, which means that there's a growing gap between what we would like to be able to do with our available resources and the demand for services. And then our federal funds for older blind have been flat for many years. And then our vocational rehabilitation award, although we are optimistic we will see some increases this time, has still not kept up with those rising costs that we've described. So I'm going to turn it over to Pete, and he's going to talk through with you, and I really appreciate your leadership as we kind of engage in this valuable conversation to build our strategic plan moving forward. So, hi, Pete.
Hi, Dacia. How are you?
Good. Thank you for
Good.
being here. Welcome.
My pleasure. My pleasure. And nice to see all you. So I've met some of you, I believe. I think you have some newer board member, newer commissioners who might not know me. Is that true?
Yes.
Yes. So I'll just introduce myself briefly. I'm Pete Pandy. My company is called Pivotal Resources. We've been working with OCB for at least a couple of years on various improvement change efforts, and including the last strategic plan. So nice to have the opportunity to work with you. So in the development of a strategic plan, obviously what's really important is that the folks who are in the governance role, as you are as commissioners, can really provide direction and guidance. So that's really what Dacia is looking for. And so I'm basically here to be the person kind of posing some questions to you. And we'd really like to get each of you to respond. I'm not going to require, but if nobody talks, I will. So that's kind of you say if you don't speak, then you can probably expect you're going to be called on. And a lot of this is really tied to what Dacia has been describing in terms of the declining resources and increasing demand, which obviously means, the old phrase, something's got to give, right? And how do we, if we have to make compromises or, and some of them might be getting creative too, what are the areas that would make the most sense to look for? So I think the questions were in the note that you got from Dacia, so I'm just going to basically be the person saying them out loud. And they're a little bit, there's a little bit of kind of overlap. They're not super distinct questions. So maybe I'll sort of take two at a time and kind of give you two questions and kind of talk through those, and then we'll take the other two. So the first two questions are, what are the key needs of Oregonians who are blind that are critical for the agency to prioritize? And what services is OCB now providing to meet those needs? And so I will just kind of, as I say, open it up to commissioners if you want to raise your hand or just speak up. Do you guys use the hand feature here in your meetings?
We could use Max can help.
Yes, I'll keep my eye open. Many people here can't see the hand when it goes up.
Yeah.
That's a good point. Well, then just speak up. And if two people speak, we'll pick who's talking.
So this is Neil AC. Pleasure
Yes.
to meet you. So quick question before we start on these first two. Could you briefly remind us what the last two are, just so I
Sure.
can make sure I don't speak on the other two if they're during these ones?
Right. Well, there's no, because they're kind of, all in the same vein. If you sort of leach into one other area, it's not an issue. But the other two, good question, are there gaps between the needs and available services that the agency should be aware of? So that's really talking about the current state, because, we may need to say, well, even if we have declining resources, maybe there are other areas that should be higher priority that we may need to focus on. So it's not all about, just assuming the current service set. There might be other areas we need to be looking at. And then the last question, in the current operational context of greater demand and shrinking resources, if we could only offer limited services, what are the absolute or non-negotiable things that OCB should be preserving?
Okay, so again, Lacey here.
Yep.
I will speak on the first two questions from my perspective or through the lens I see things through. So for myself, in my profession as a native JAWS user and a state employee, one thing I see often is the JAWS skills, the expertise, at times can be quite low for someone depending on it. And so I think assistive technology being understood, developed, the skills developed, and being an expert at your assistive technology is extremely important. And I personally believe is a responsibility as an assistive tech user to be at that level if you're interested in the professional field. So to me, that is extremely important. Developing your skills with your assistive technology. And then another thing I see often, perhaps more in the rural community that I live in Eastern Oregon, Western Idaho, is a lot of the blind community is segregated into their living situation, their living environment, and don't venture out at all through lack of mobility, orientation and mobility. And then, of course, access to public road systems, which is not a Commission for the Blind issue, but so orientation and mobility, assistive technology, and even so like in there, how would I put it? Associating the blind individual into community involvement seems to be very important, and made a huge difference for me. Those three things: being able to get out and about, learning how to engage in community if you've been isolated so long into your home, just kind of getting back out and involved and being able to navigate on your own, and then the assistive technology. That's my answer.
Very good. All right. Who would like
This is Alan. I can speak next.
Alan?
So as a low vision rehabilitation specialist, I see patients of all ages, and from my perspective, like the biggest need is very very similar to what Nalasi says. Like the people who are, I guess, most desperate for help are usually people of working age, trying to survive, try to make it, make an income, try to be independent, and so vocational rehabilitation and learning the skills they need to be employed, assistive technologies, computer skills, JAWS, those are really desperately needed to be maintained or even increased. The other thing is orientation mobility, to be able to get be confident, comfortable to walk around independently, get to their jobs, get to their friends' homes or wherever, just to be able to be independent, and that needs to be maintained or increased, in my opinion. Thank you.
Great.
This is Scott. I can speak from the education perspective. I think the transition programs that the Commission for the Blind does, and just that connection with students and families, kind of leading to long-term connection to the Commission for the Blind. The summer work experience programs, and expanding it to more of our students in the last few years has been really powerful. I think what I've seen is with students I've worked with for many years, amazing growth during those short periods of time, in their travel skills and their understanding of assistive technology, things that we've worked in the school system for years to do, that somehow catch on during this time. So I think serves two purposes: them learning the skills they need, and then also that lifelong connection to the commission and that comfort level. Like we do cooking classes. The commission's hosted a couple of cooking classes recently, and I think those opportunities make a real difference for the families and the students who are benefiting from that.
Very good.
and this is Neil Lacey. I think a huge barrier to overcome that I think significantly changes how someone navigates through life blind is that confidence when they're able to overcome that I'm blind, poor me, I can't do anything, to I can do anything. I just have to find the way to do it and develop the confidence to be able to troubleshoot and of course the Commission for the Blind, utilizing other resources to kind of gain that first foothold. But I think, yeah, confidence, finding this, I don't even know that's a category, but I think the I don't know any other way to put it, but like the victim mentality, poor me, can really hinder progress, simply because the confidence isn't there, and just trying to find a way to improve that can often be the first step into a miraculous change.
Mm-hmm.
Not meaning to take over, but I want to agree with Lacey on this. I think what we see in that time with our students is that, many of the students are the only blind person that are in the school that they're at. We do a lot of work to try to do that in our program, but having these opportunities to live and work with the kids just makes a big change, and it kind of separates that, only person dealing with this challenge
Right.
kind of perspective. So,
And I want to, okay, so this is Nadira. I think some really important points, some valid points have been made here, but from my perspective as someone who is blind, I do not want to see, even with the financial shortfalls, I really would still like to see definitely focus on orientation and mobility. Yes, it's very important, but independent living skills. So it's important to learn how to live as a blind person independently. I know that Nalisi was just talking about the victim mentality, just being aware that it can depend on the individual and where they were raised, the situation they were raised in as well, and the mindsets that we have to battle every day, even as an adult, battling these mindsets that you are not capable of doing certain things. It's not easy for everybody to rise above that. And the good thing about the program that even I did at the commission, being able to get around other people, so the living with blindness class, for example, being able to interact with other blind people who, were fairly new to this, and knowing that you're not alone. So that support is important. The encouragement is important. Learning how to do things. Even there was a class with Shar that I did, etiquette. Well, people want to understand how important that is, because learning how to, well, having work skills is important, but if you get into the workplace and you don't know how to interact with people, that's not going to help you. And as a blind person, you need to learn these skills, sit upright, work on it may not be definitively eye contact, but look at who you're speaking to. Those sorts of things, it could fall under confidence, like Nalisi was saying, but those skills, even in that class, learning how to eat properly, if I can put it like that, those sorts of things. So just things that sighted people would take for granted. I would like to, see that blind people are being taught these things. So the work skills, the orientation and mobility, and just a quick note on JAWS. I have a friend who says that blindness is an expensive habit. Okay. And to be fair, it has nothing to do with the commission. They don't price JAWS, but learning how to use JAWS is one thing. But making sure that we have access to it as well. Yeah, that's important as well. Okay, and the updates and, I don't claim to be an expert, but there are times when I've had to stick on older versions of JAWS because, I couldn't afford an update, those sorts of things, right? Yeah. I'll just leave the floor open for anyone else who wants to speak now. Go ahead.
Great. Thanks, Nadira. That was very good. All been good.
Well, it sounds like everything the commission does is important.
Yeah, that's the hard thing.
Yeah.
Yes, that was well articulated, Nilisi. The how do I get from the I can't to the I can? And life skills, etiquette, all those things all are ways to reach that.
Stephanie. So a blind person who lives in Southern Oregon, I live in Grants Pass. Majority of these things you're talking are up there in Portland area. So I know there's a lot of blind people that they'll get these skills and then they don't do anything with it. Because they're in, at least where I live, I find a lot of older blind people that are now afraid to go out of their homes. So yeah, having these living skills. So my question is, people who live in Southern Oregon, is there going to still be able for them to go to the center in Portland? Because I know that's a huge cost as well. So that they can have those trainings, or is there going to be more trainings, the living independent skills in Oregon? Because we don't really have that here. So I guess making sure that everybody in the state has access to these things is my question or my concern.
Right.
So just piggybacking off of Stephanie, so with the independent living program / older blind as well, which often takes a hit, when it comes to finances. This is really a tough situation to be in because I joined this board to represent Oregonians who are blind, not just Oregonians in the Portland metro area. And so I fell into a gap when I first started where I had to start in the independent living program and then move over to VR. And I don't want to see, I hate seeing that, I know we have to make these cuts, but like Stephanie, I really want that people who aren't necessarily in these more populated areas will still get services.
Yes.
Yeah. That's it.
Daisha, do you have any questions, follow-up questions to the comments that have been made, or should we move on to the next pair of questions? We've covered all the commissioners, right?
Yeah, I've been taking notes. I think, Stephanie, what I heard you saying is you want to make sure that there's statewide services. I think Nadira, you picked up on that too. When we're talking about for the purposes of strategic plan, it's really at the, a high level. This is not getting into, some of the things around, when we get into a budget conversation, which will be in future meetings, we will start to have conversations around, do we want to, for the sake of conserving resources, change kind of some of the service delivery models? So I think that those are great things to be thinking as we kind of move into more of those financial decisions in future meetings.
Actually, I realized Commissioner Hudson, I don't think we've heard from you yet.
I know, and I wish I had something new to bring to the table, and not to sound like that wishy-washy person, but I couldn't agree more with the fellow commissioners and their thoughts and opinions. Absolutely. Thank you, guys.
Great.
So this is Nadira. I have a quick question about one of them. So the customer service area, I don't know, Dish, if you could, or Pete, you, whichever, could you just elaborate a bit more on that customer service element?
Yeah, what Nadir is referring to is one of our current strategic priorities is related to customer service. And as we're kind of thinking about crafting a more targeted strategic plan, whether we want to have some focus on customer service. One of our key goals as an agency is exemplary service. And the governor, when she came into office a few years ago, her primary focus for government was customer service. And so we wanted to make sure that we were highlighting that that is inherent in our internal goals and priorities as well. And when we think about customer service, we obviously, our primary customer are Oregonians who are blind to either needs help with obtaining and maintaining employment, but also living independently. But we also provide customer service to family members, to service providers, and then it may not look so much on the surface, but there's a lot of internal services and supports that happen here in order for the direct services out the door to clients to happen. And we have high performance standards internally for high customer service. So as resources become more constrained, the question, and I would encourage commissioners to be thinking about that irrespective of if folks are waiting or things, may take longer than we would like, we still want to maintain that exemplary service standard when we're able to get to serve folks that they're experiencing the same high level of quality of services that is important to their outcomes and really speaks to what you all have been talking about in terms of making sure that there is the highest level of skills related to orientation mobility, skills related to technology, that quality customer service is maintained throughout even a resource constrained environment, if that makes sense.
Does that respond to your question, Commissioner Broom?
Yes.
Good. I think customer service is something that, there's a broad part of it, but then there's also how do we tailor it to each individual, and that's where it becomes especially important, and understanding the specific needs of each person and how we help them individually, right? All right, so I think with the very good comments we've gotten, now let's go on to the next two areas, and I think Commissioner McGarry already kind of identified one, which is are there gaps in the needs and available services that the agency should be aware of? And then the other question is, in the current context of growing demand and shrinking resources, if we had to limit services, what are the ones that you would say, don't touch it? And since you had to wait for everybody else, Commissioner Hudson, maybe I'll have you start this time so you won't be the ditto person again.
Definitely do not touch, hands off, the SWEP program. In my opinion, just it's so valuable for the youth to gain all those skills, be surrounded by fellow blind students, have fun, navigate cities. You just see them grow literally in such short amount of time. And kind of piggybacking on, oh, there I said it, but what Stephanie said is like, she's worried about, the resources in the rural areas being limited. And I know we've talked about this before, but I feel like a lot of blind Oregonians don't even know what's available to them. I think just making sure we're doing our best to communicate what's available to everybody, wherever they may live. Yes. I don't know if I answered the question. Yeah.
I'm sorry, what was that?
Did I answer the question right?
Yeah, I think you did. So there are gaps that you've seen. The other
Well,
piece.
I think just sharing like what is available
Okay, gotcha. Okay,
to blind Oregonians.
right.
So this is New Lacey. Gaps definitely rural. Stephanie was right on there. The more rural, the less available. And in my area, in small Eastern Oregon, the number one question I get from it's typically from family members of blind of blind their blind family members is where do they go? Like, how do you what's the first step I need to do to start getting help? So the information is just, especially in the rural areas, is just not available anywhere. I mean, in the whole eastern side of the state, there's only what, Redmond, Oregon office, a small satellite office, and so half the state get is a very small team there. But just those are the two main things, just things that have already been touched upon. In terms of what not to touch, I mean, that's going to be, I mean, obviously purely subjective, but I will always hold on to, assistive tech, the technology training, anything related to job market, um, you know, um, I'm sure part of the training is the free versions, right? Like, is it Nadira? Am I saying that right? So eloquently said, JAWS is an expensive technology. I mean, being blind in general is expensive. All the assistive tech costs a lot, but there are free versions. So making sure those are known, and technologies that can be used, and develop the expertise to use them to navigate proficiently at a high level. If JAWS isn't an option, or I forget the free version of close view. I think that's the magnification one. It's been a while. And the free version of talk to speech, or I guess the free version of Dragon, and so forth. So just information, and so technology, mobility, the life skills, SWEP. I mean, they're all very important and critical depending on what stage of life you're in. So it's very difficult to say, nah, this is more important than that. Well, maybe because you're a youth instead of an older blind community member, where the independent living is far more important than SWEP, or you're in a working age or not in a working age, or if you're city or rural, which we all know those are nuances that we have to shift through.
Very good.
This is Alan.
Yep, go ahead, Alan.
See, I guess for the gaps, wait time, especially for O&M training. Another gap would be, I guess, like the folks that just missed the qualifications for OCB services. Like if they're just outside, they say like their visual acuity is 25 degrees. And it's like, well, they have, functionally they're having, a hard time, just like somebody who has a 20 degree visual field, but they just don't qualify. So they're kind of in limbo. And then there's like, then they're hoping that their vision, they're not sure, like, oh, should I hope my visual acuity gets, or my visual acuity or my visual field gets worse just so I can qualify for the services? It's really tough for them. And then, of course, in terms of non-negotiables, assistive technology is very important. That should definitely be uh, not be limited at all.
Very good. Thank you.
This is Scott. I'll go. I think gaps. I think the rural gap is something that we all deal with in Oregon, and it's a challenge everywhere. That's probably one of the biggest ones. Things that can't go away. I think most things. SWEP for sure. The work with all the students throughout Oregon. That's been something that's been happening more lately with different areas of Oregon, and I think that needs to continue. And all the other stuff, Braille instruction, assistive technology. I think there's nothing that they do that I would think is non-negotiable at this point, but it sounds like we need to make some decisions about how that order is going to happen for clients, but it's all important.
Mm-hmm.
Stephanie? So I know at one time we talked about, so non-negotiable for me is not having, that all Oregonians can get this help, no matter where they live. Because I know as finances create barriers for people to get the services, I hope that's something that we would not stop, that, that because really, I mean, I'm being the president of NFB, I get a lot of people that call me, where do I go? Where do I go for services? They're newly blind. And I refer them to Oregon Commission for the Blind. So I would just hope non-negotiable is that we still have services for every Oregonian that needs the help that is a blind person.
Mm-hmm.
Okay, this is Nadira. Okay, this is a really unbelievably horrible position to be in, because we are operating within these constraints. For me, I can just echo that the gaps are, reaching the people who need to be reached. But it's one thing to let people know what's available to them, but when you don't necessarily have the resources to provide the services that they need, that is an issue.
Mm-hmm.
My non-negotiables would be I will echo I'll echo Laurel and say SWAP is very important. The VR program, without a doubt. And making sure that the people who need it have access to these to the adaptive technology, whatever that may be, the fusions, the JAWS, and the independent living skills, the orientation and mobility. I don't think those things should be touched.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
Very good. So I'm tempted. I'm going to check with Daisha if it might be helpful as one more question, just to get thoughts from the commissioners on ways that OCB might be able to leverage its services in ways that maybe don't require resources, or are there thoughts about how you can do more with less that they might offer suggestions? For example, I think it was Nalesi who talked about, there are free versions of some of these services. They may not be optimal, but they give someone that. So I'm just thinking, are there other suggestions that might be worth? We're not here to solve the problems, but if the constraints are there, that it is important to see, well, how do we preserve it in a way that enables OCB to still meet needs that it might not otherwise with the shrunk budget? Would that be an okay, final question to throw out?
Sure.
Yeah, I
Yeah.
think, any organization that's not OCB, I mean, we work with various different agencies, you're used to doing things the way you do them, and sometimes other people say, how come they don't do that, right? So this is the how come they don't do that kind of point of the conversation.
Stephanie? So as far as technology, each person is at their own level of JAWS. So what about like somehow getting students together to share their technology stuff? Because I know I have my own friends that I call and I say, okay, I don't know how to do this. How do you do that? So, I mean, that might be, I don't know, it's just a suggestion that,
Sure.
somehow getting people together that maybe can help each other with their skills, because being the National Federation of Blind as a president, I see this all the time that some people has this skill, but they don't have that skill. So then when we get together, we teach each other.
Mm-hmm.
That might be a suggestion somehow, that because I know in Medford, I only meet people unless and see if I see them out on the bus, on the bus or something like that. I don't have any way, because I know of confidentiality issues, to be able to see, the people that are being served at OCB in Southern Oregon. But I know there's a lot of people out there that, could benefit from that. Maybe just being able to be connected with other, blind people that maybe are not getting the services anymore to, because I know we get rusty with our mobility skills, we get rusty with our technology skills. So if maybe some type of a tutoring system, I don't know, it's just a suggestion.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, and since I'm the one who said this would be helpful, I just want to point out that because you're making a suggestion doesn't mean it's going to suddenly happen. But I
Yes.
think it's just okay, good.
Yep.
Because I don't want to get a note from Daisha later saying, "What did you do?"
No.
Okay,
So
good.
this is Alan. I
Yeah.
want, is it possible to use like an AI agent to help with some questions and some training with some assistive technology? Give your AI agent could be your private tutor while you're trying to after getting some basic training in JAWS, for instance, or some other technology or software.
You probably don't know until you try it, but it's probably worth trying. I know we do work where we do statistical analysis, and people buy expensive software packages to do statistical analysis. And turns out if you ask the same question to the AI, it'll give you all the statistical analysis, but you're not buying the $1,500 software package. And sort of like, who knew until throw the question up there. So
Yeah.
yeah, good.
So this is Neil Lacey. So there's FS Companion, which is a JAWS feature. And it's something I do daily. And when I'm trying to learn or figure out how to do something with JAWS on the computer, if it's within a specific application or uh, browser or what have you, I can access it with shortcut keys, and then it's an AI, and then I ask it questions and have conversation. And how do I do this specific thing with JAWS in this application? And it will teach me and show me how to do it. And then I
Mm-hmm.
practice it. Or I can turn keyboard help on, in any application or on a browser, and I can turn the keyboard help on, and I can just start practicing key commands. All right, how do I do
Mm-hmm.
this? Or what does this do? And then that's how I often remind myself certain smart keys or quick key navigation on the browser. I mean, I do a lot of testing of websites, and so I'm sometimes there's an obscure command I can't remember because I use it once every month or something. And then I go back and just reteach myself. But there's things out there. But again, if you don't know where to go, you don't have the basic skills to start, they're irrelevant. They're useless until you get to that level. And that's where, technology class and so forth help. And or JAWS may not be acceptable or available for whatever reason. Then I don't know if there's a version of that for NVDA. I would doubt it because it's a free, simple version. But for JAWS users, there's stuff out there that can really be helpful. And I'm working with a group of UAT testers who are cited for the state of Oregon now, and I'm teaching them these skills. All right, this is where you go when you want to practice how to use JAWS as a cited user without the experience. This is where you go if you have a question. How do I do this with JAWS? Because you can Google it, but Google's often wrong, and it just opens up a nightmare of confusion where this FS companion that's JAWS specific, you can go there, ask it questions, and then practice it with the keyboard help on. And then, over time, you become a very expert user of JAWS, for example. But anyways.
Good.
I just want to quickly add here, this is Nadira. So I think that Stephanie had a really good suggestion. And again, it's just a suggestion, but I think navigating confidentiality and all that. I think I've always found that having call it a peer system or having, I don't know, a mentor or something, which would then open up the question of who would be willing to volunteer their time for this, and but I always say no one can probably teach a blind person as well as a blind person, because even when it comes to troubleshooting technology issues, which many of us do on a daily basis. So I think it would be good to have some sort of, I'm just throwing it out there, volunteer pool. And I'm trying to, tread the fine line between being on the board and actually what am I able to do outside of the board. So I would be willing to definitely do something like that, to be a volunteer to tutor or whatever the case may be.
Right.
So it's just a thought.
Well, I would hope, I'm not an expert on state law in that regard, but I would hope that the ground rules for being a board member would not prohibit you from doing volunteer work if it happened to be in the same arena.
That's why I said volunteer, because I wouldn't, a paid thing would be something different. That would be a conflict, but yes, the volunteer definite.
And I think one of the themes that I'm hearing through a lot of this is, it kind of goes back to Neelacy's comment about building confidence, that exposure to other blind people who have faced the same challenges and overcome them, you can help each other, is kind of a big opportunity. Not only it's an opportunity, I'm sure it's happening now, but how to leverage that could be there's definitely an element of that in a lot of these ideas. Other suggestions? Okay. So Daisha, I think we've got the input that you were asking for. Do you have any other questions you want to follow up in terms of the strategic plan or talking about what you're looking to do as next steps?
Commissioners, are there other things that we didn't ask you that you would have liked to have been asked in terms of just thinking about your experience, what you hear from us, things that are on your mind about how we plan and prioritize services?
Then this is Neelacy. I think the unfortunate reality that we face as commissioner members is, you know, select do we focus on the youth or do we focus on the older population? And I mean, there's the old additive, you know, to secure the future, you have to invest in the youth. So if I were forced to select between which programs to keep and which ones, if we had to absolutely get rid of, the unfortunate and decision that hurts my heart would be keep the youth programs that support the youth, and let go of the ones that support the older population first. Though I would hate making that decision and would hate myself forever if I had to make that one, but that would definitely secure the future of, you know, blind Oregonians.
Thank you, Nalesi.
Mm-hmm.
Other thoughts or reactions to what Nalesi just shared?
Yes, this is Nadira. And this is probably why I would not like to be in a management position, but I have to agree when it comes down to making tough decisions. The SWET program and the AR program, which tend to be the ones to I hear saying it, bring certain returns, would definitely have to be my priority as well. I'm sorry, I hate having to say that. I can't say how much I hate having to say it, but we are in a position where we have to make these tough decisions. So yeah, that's just my 2 cents there.
Thank you.
Stephanie, I'm just hoping that doing this order of selection will help so that all blind or Oregonian people get the services that they need. Because, you know, young and old are blind people that's what the Oregon Commission on Blind is supposed to be helping. So I mean, I understand it's hard financially, but you know, if you're going to do order selection, this is hard. This is a hard decision. I just don't feel that any blind person should go without services. And there's got to be a way we can figure this out.
Thank you, Stephanie.
Mm-hmm.
In terms of next steps, one of the things I'm sure Max is taking notes, I've been taking notes. We will have obviously the recording of this meeting. So we'll go through and you know, it is really hard for us to have a conversation about strategic planning and strategic priorities without kind of crossing over into the resource conversation because of the situation that we're facing. So we will try our best to parcel that out, and spend the next meeting focusing on what are the most important areas, which I really appreciate all of your comments. I think that there is a lot of material for us to summarize and bring back to you for refinement. So we will do that. And then just to prepare, thinking about what are next steps in the your June and then your August meeting, that we will kind of be making the shift between your March meeting and the June meeting from planning, wrapping that up, and then kind of move right into that resource conversation. And then we'll spend the next couple of months talking about resources. I would envision by then we'll have implemented order of selection, and we'll have data around what the impact of that is, if there's some cost savings for us to kind of slow down the front door and for services in the vocational rehabilitation program. The other reminder is we've been holding positions vacant as they become open to try to offset some of those higher costs in case services that we're experiencing in order to kind of keep somewhat control over our expenditures. And we will continue to do that in the short term, recognizing that just that activity alone, having positions vacant, means that we have reduced the service delivery infrastructure a bit. And at this point, it's out of necessity because we don't have the budget to be able to finish the biennium. And then there are some other conversations that we can have about how we might be able to engage conversations with potentially the legislature and the commission about strategic use of the donated funds that we have received from people largely that have benefited from our services over the years. So lots of conversations will come and we'll try to stage it in a way where we can wrap up the strategic conversation and then shift into budgeting shortly thereafter.
Okay. Thank you, Pete. Thank you,
Thank you very
Daisha.
much.
Thank you, commissioners, for your input. All right, do we have any further comments, questions? No? All right, well, hearing none.
2:45 p.m.
It is 2:45 p.m. and this meeting is adjourned.